Hi, I wanted to do a demonstration for you of how you can use ZIA and ZPA to steer traffic in a deterministic way, presenting you with a source IP, making a decision on if you're on network or off network, and run through a couple of things. So here you'll see I've got my ZPA profile policy set up. I've got some wildcards. This will pick up anything in welshgeek.net. I've got some other bits and pieces in here. What's important for this demonstration is I specifically bypass this thing called NLS, Network Location Services. You'll see it used across a number of different places, but really this is an FQDN. It doesn't need to be a physical server, it just needs to be able to resolve to an IP address. And in this example, it bypasses ZPA, so it excludes it from the wildcard and just says, well, the client should resolve this thing directly. So show you what that looks like. If I dig nls.welshgeek.net, I'm on network and it resolves to 192.168.1.2. And if I say, let's go to 834.34.34, I get a different answer back. So when I'm off network, it'll resolve to something external. When I'm on network, it'll resolve something internal. And I use that in a couple of different places. If I just look very briefly at my forwarding profile on my tunnel mode, it says if nls.welshgeek.net equals 192.168.1.2, then I must be on network. Great stuff. So it makes it very deterministic. DNS resolution, fine. So for what I can then do, if I look at my my pack files that I'm using, a very specific one here for Zscaler App, what this is essentially saying is do a DNS resolution for the network location service, figure out what my actual source IP as far as the PAX file server is concerned, and it says, okay, well, if it's these domains, if it's welshgeek.net, and let's do a DNS resolution. If it's the ZPA range, and it should go direct, otherwise it'll go into the tunnels. And then it says, okay, well, if the network location service is 192.168.1.2, I'm on the network, then if my egress IP address, as in what Zscaler has seen the request coming from, is this, then I must be on the network, send it to a certain gateway and then a secondary gateway, and alternatively I must be off the network, so send it to a different gateway and whatever. These ones here in this demonstration, I just invert them, but these could be a private VZEN or a virtual VZEN, however you want to do. Remember, this is the application pack file. So what that means is that anything that has been intercepted by the tunnel, how does Zscaler App decide where it's going to forward it to? And in tunnel mode, that's going to be everything that's port 80 and 443 that's on the machine. All well and good. In terms of my forwarding profile, though, I also have some other steering options that I want to do. When I'm off on trusted network, I just want to use the standard settings, tunnel mode, let ZApp pick the stuff up. If I'm on the trusted network, let it just route to anything that's internal and connect to it. If it's off network and it's port 80 and 443, tunnel mode will intercept it and follow the routing decisions made by the application profile. But I also have a decision, I've made a decision what determines on and off network, and therefore I can also have another pack file, and this is specific. This gets set in the browser, and this pack file here is things that I want to steer through a different proxy via ZPA. Now, here's an interesting thing. I could advertise iplocation.net as an application via ZPA. ZPA is domain-based, can do IP addresses, but invariably we're going to fix it to a domain. And I could say, anytime the user goes to iplocation.net, I want to advertise it through a specific server group and a specific connector to present it onto the internet with a fixed IP address. However, that is not going to go through any security, as in it's not passing through the ZIA service, it is not therefore getting SSL inspected, it is not getting browser vulnerability shielding, it is not getting sandbox, and it is not getting advanced threat protection. So I don't particularly want to do that unless it's a really trusted third party, and I don't want to do any of those kind of things like there's certificate pinning. But what I can do is use this pack file and say, okay, well, let's impose a pack file on the browser and steer that traffic as explicit proxy, but through Zscaler private access. So let's take a look at this pack file. The easiest way to do that, let's just curl this pack file here, and as you can see, very, very simple pack file. It says, okay, if you go into anything that's iplocation.net, whatsmyip.org, or silog.org, return these proxy variables. And I've been very specific in determining these. These are hard coded, but I could use these as variables in the pack file. These ones here, I'm sending it to port 8800, which is the Kerberos port, and I'm picking up the host names of the Kerberos ZEN. So if it's any of these locations, send it to the Kerberos ZENs, or the ZENs on the Kerberos port, I should be more precise. And if it's anything else, well, we just want it to go direct. Remember, this is a pack file in the browser. So it says go direct, which means that it drops to the operating system, and the operating system then just routes the traffic, gets picked up because it's port 80 or 443, and goes through the tunnel. All well and good. So how does this look in practice? Well, of course, I'm on network at the moment, and therefore if I go to ip.zscaler.com, I'm picking up that node 185.46.212.102. That's because that IP was reversed. We can check that out. curl http pack.zscaler2.net, welshgeek.net, zapp.pack, and we're following this path. We know what our egress IP address is. We know what the network location service is, which is 1.2. So we're going to follow this path. This matches because we are at that known location, and therefore the proxy will trigger on that. So the traffic steering is going correctly. But if I go to whatsmyip.org, it's going to say the same thing. IP address is the ZEN. Let's find out a bit more information about us. And what we know is that it's seeing, we know server IP address, we know what the proxy is, and we should be seeing an X forwarded 4 header in there. It's not displaying the headers, so let's go to, I think, silog.org/headers. Will tell us all the data about it. X forwarded 4 there is my IP address. So all well and good. But let's go ahead and move off the corporate network and jump onto my personal hotspot. Okay, so I'm on the hotspot. Let's refresh what Zscaler tells us we are. So I'm now coming from this 185 address. That's Vodafone's network. Pretty short. 185 Vodafone. All of this information is the same. But what I've done on Zscaler private access is I have advertised those proxy hosts specifically as entries, and they're going to come through my my data center source IP address. If we just take a quick look at Zscaler over here, we're now off the trusted network, so it's going to follow all of those settings. If I come into my network preferences, I should now see under the proxies, my pack file's been configured, so that's good. So let's go ahead and take a look at this Zscaler. Now I should expect to see this stay the same, and it absolutely has. It still sees my X forwarded 4 address over here. This one should stay the same. X forwarded 4 in there. But the Zscaler one, of course, is not, so it'll see my real IP address. So I've got a couple of different ways to steer the traffic. Now, what's also worth looking at is how the Kerberos tickets will look, because we're using Kerberos now as the forwarding. So I've got my my service ticket, my Kerberos ticket granting ticket for WelshGeek.net, the ticket granting ticket for Zscaler 2, and then I've got my service ticket here that's issued by Zscaler 2 to the VZEN for the purpose of authenticating me over that tunnel. And then finally, if we come into the Zscaler portal here and go into Web Insights, particularly interested in the last 5 minutes or so, here we can see, here's the Zscaler traffic. So this is a couple of minutes ago, but let's just filter on Zscaler because we're particularly interested in that one. URL search, we want the host to be zscaler.org. Here we can see the traffic. It's properly SSL inspected as you'd hope. And what's interesting is, we see the client IP address. We see the external IP address is always the 81.140, and all of that traffic is passed through Zscaler, and we've got the different times and everything as you'd expect in here. How are we looking for time? 3:03. We should, over the last, there we go, 3:02, and we come over here. Now, these 3 transactions, because we're not going through a GRE tunnel or an IPsec tunnel, and it's not Zscaler App forwarding, we only actually see the external IP address because it's doing NAT on my firewall after the connector. But we know all of that, and we'll see that in the forwarding mechanism here that it says pack file rather than Zscaler App. So I hope that's useful. A couple of different ways to steer traffic. Kerberos being used because we want to get that authentication. A couple of different things you could do there as well. Send it to a tunnel, send it to a private VZEN, send it to a virtual VZEN. You could then use Zscaler App as that forwarding mechanism as well. Hope that helps. Cheers.